What the city is talking about.
The news that impacts you.
Welcome to the Montreal Now podcast.
With Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Welcome to another edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and this week we'll cover these stories. With over 150,000 federal government workers on strike and costing our economy millions of dollars a day, the question of the government's management of finances is on the mind of Canadians, as evidenced by a new Nanos research poll. Nick Nanos will explain.
Inflation went down in the month of March, so why are grocery bills still going up? Are we getting gouged? SYLVAIN Charlebois, the food professor, always has the answers.
Self-driving cars are taking a little longer than expected to become a trusted and regular part of how we get around. But now researchers are teaching them to deal with something all motorists have to anyway. Road rage. CTV tech analyst CARMI LEVY on that, and how a rocket that explodes minutes after liftoff is considered a major success.
But we begin with this. Little Keira lost her life when she was just 4 years old, and yet she still managed to change the world. Keira's law passed the Senate this week. It will change the way courts approach domestic violence. So this is an absolutely tragic story, but something good has come of it. Keira was just 4 years old when she died in what her mother says was a murder-suicide at the hands of her father. That was in 2020. This week, Keira's law was passed in the Senate, and going forward, it will change the way courts handle cases of domestic violence. So Keira might not be here anymore, but she still managed to change the world. Keira's mother and stepfather join us now, Jennifer KAGEN-VIATER and Philip Viater. Thank you to you both for being here. And I think, above all, thank you for your courage to keep telling this story. It can't be easy.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having us.
Jennifer, what would you like us to all know about Keira and how her life was lost?
Yeah, so Keira was an intelligent, lovely child who in many ways was a typical 4-year-old, liked to play with her friends, enjoy time outside. But unfortunately, given the circumstances, her life was very tragic. I left the situation of domestic violence in a previous marriage, and while I was able to ensure my own safety, we then sought protection for Keira via the court system. She was failed by the family court and child protection system, and ultimately was killed in a murder-suicide. So we want people to remember, not how she died, but, just what she represented, and that was light and, changing the world, helping other kids and families.
Before I ask you a little bit more about the details of Bill C-233, Jennifer, I understand that there was a really kind of completely unacceptable moment that happened while you were in court with the judge.
Yes, there were many unacceptable moments, but the one that I know I mentioned is when I tried to talk about domestic violence on the stand during our parenting trial. A judge who had a background in labor employment law and no training in domestic violence cut me off and said domestic violence is not relevant to parenting, and he's going to ignore it and essentially, put Keira into unsafe hands. Wow. Yeah.
I don't even know. I just, Aaron's shaking his head. I am too. I'm just... And then to know what happened as a result. Let me bring Philip in on this, Philip, because you were a part of all of this. What was your reaction in those moments?
When it comes to the court moments, I'm, of course, extremely disappointed. I'm a family law lawyer myself, and it's very aggravating when you're getting judges who aren't trained in the areas of domestic violence and don't understand its impact on parenting. So you feel very helpless, I think, and it's the same type of feeling I can see victims of violence going through in the family court system, where they just feel completely helpless. Their lives are in the hands of another human being who may or may not even understand what it is they're talking about, and their children's lives are in that person's hands, and it's very scary.
Jennifer, I'll bring you back in here just in terms of, you can't bring Keira back, and yet there's clearly a determination in you to make sure that her life was not lost in vain. How did you continue to fight? How did you make sure that this bill was going to happen and it was indeed passed in Senate on Tuesday?
Absolutely. I mean, in so many of these cases, the children are sadly forgotten and, change doesn't occur. And, we were screaming and shouting from the rooftops, engaging with elected officials and, speaking to the media that things need to change. And through all of this advocacy over this period of time, we have certainly so much support from Canadians from coast to coast, and change is happening. So, this bill, Keira's Law, was tabled by Liberal Member of Parliament from Lachine LaSalle, MP Dillon, and it will raise the level of education for federally appointed judges on coercive control and domestic violence. And we're starting to see similar measures being enacted provincially across the country. So there's a recognition of the failures for Keira and for many other children and victims, and a recognition that we need to be doing better to save these lives.
So can I ask, beyond Keira's Law here, and perhaps advice is not the right way to frame this, but what happens to people who find themselves in a situation like this, in a domestic violence situation where a child is involved? What kind of information, what kind of help can you give them, having gone through what you've gone through?
Absolutely. I mean, I wish there was a magic bullet at this juncture to say this is how to navigate, but the systems are still very much failing these families and these children. I'm hearing horror story after horror story where a child's being abused and no action is being taken. So change does take time, and we feel confident this is a first step. And we're going to continue, and there needs to be much more. But I would encourage victims in this situation to reach out to their local women's shelter, to reach out to local advocates, to make sure that they're educating and informing themselves. I mean, of course, the legal system is very difficult to navigate, and Philip may have some more advice in that regard.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, now that Keira's Law is passed and it's unanimous, I've now heard that term, and I've heard of that term being used in arguments in court now to raise the level of awareness for judges. And I think, as it will take time for this to really trickle down, if you can help and assist the judge in explaining why domestic violence is a thing, point to Keira's Law, point to other resources. For example, the Department of Justice put out a help toolkit where they did this wonderful thing about why domestic violence is relevant to parenting, and it could be used in court, and you could find it easily on the internet. Judges are more receptive when you could show them the way, I find.
And I don't want to sound skeptical here, and I'm, I love that this bill requires that judges consider domestic violence going forward. And yet I can't help but think that there's still a little bit of an old mindset that's going to come into play here. How confident are you that this really will change the way things work going forward?
I mean, we are seeing some changes here in Ontario on the ground, which is quite good in terms of, hearing better outcomes from survivors who are going into court. I absolutely agree with you. There's that older mentality, and I think slowly the culture is going to shift and change, and I think we're already starting to see that, but it is a first step, and there is much more that's needed to be done, in particular in places where there's been historically a lot of resistance.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
I think one of the superpowers of Keira's Law is really that it brings the discourse to the public. It brings it out in the open. Now everyone knows this is a big issue, and slowly but surely we're hoping to get that culture shift, that culture change. It's not going to happen overnight, but if we continue to bring this forward in the public's mind, and the public continues to shout, which they have, because it was a unanimous vote throughout all of Canada that this needs to be done, I think we could achieve positive results.
Oh, yeah, it is. I mean, it is a step in the right direction. I think let's just end. I'd like to ask both of you how you felt when Keira's Law passed in Senate on Tuesday. It's got to be a great solace. How are each of you feeling about this?
Yes, I mean, it was a really historic moment, historic for women and children. I mean, there hasn't been a bill of this nature for, really, it's a historic bill. And, so we were really, really glad to see it pass. It's exciting, and we're just so thankful to the wonderful MPs and to Senator Dalhousie, the sponsor of the bill, who worked so hard to see this pass so quickly.
It's a huge achievement, and obviously it took you a long time to get here, and the circumstances that helped to get here, sadly, can't be reversed. But, just congratulations, first of all, to you for having taken it this far, because this will make a difference in people's lives going forward. So I salute you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And again, like we said, it can't be easy to keep telling this story. So thank you for your courage to continue doing so. Very much appreciate both of your time today. That is Jennifer KAGEN-VIATER and Philip VIATER, mom and stepfather to Keira. Keira's law was passed in the Senate, Bill C-233. It happened on Tuesday.
It's on the books.
Informative,
interactive,
and always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
With over 150,000 federal government workers on strike and costing our economy millions of dollars a day, the question of the government's management of finances is on the mind of Canadians, as evidenced by a new Nanos research poll. Nick Nanos will explain.
Well, to say it has been a rock and roll week for Justin Trudeau might be an understatement, with over 155,000 federal workers now officially on strike. And then the grumbling about the Prime Minister's expensive family vacation to Jamaica. I guess it's probably no surprise that a new Nanos poll shows that Canadians are growing more and more distrustful of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's management of public finances. Meanwhile, his rival, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, is the most trusted. Let's find out more. Nick Nanos is the chair of Nanos Research, and he joins us now. Thanks for your time today, Nick.
Great to join you and all your listeners.
So walk us through some of these numbers. Trust for Trudeau has gone down since before the pandemic. I guess no big surprise.
Yeah, but the thing is that usually when you are Prime Minister, you have the advantage when it comes to views on who people trust for economic growth. And in the latest survey that we did with Bloomberg News, what we have is Pierre Poilievre basically at around 30%, followed by Justin Trudeau at 27%. Put this into context. Before the pandemic in September 2019, Trudeau was first and also at around 35%. So we've basically seen a decline in the proportion of Canadians that trust Justin Trudeau most on economic growth.
So that's, okay, that from 35% down to 27%, that's definitely substantial. But that 3% between Trudeau and Poilievre, does that seem substantial to you?
Well, the thing is that the margin of error for the survey is about 3 percentage points, plus or minus 19 times out of 20. So it's close. But the thing is that the reality is that usually whoever happens to be Prime Minister has a built-in advantage because they're sitting in the seat. The other number that's been interesting is none of the above, like trusting none of the federal party leaders. That's doubled over the past number of years. About 10% back in 2019 said they trusted none of them on economic growth. That's now up to 20%. Probably speaks to the level of anxiety, disappointment, frustration, just list whatever you want to list, that many Canadians have in paying the bills right now, and how they don't feel that there are any plausible choices.
Yeah, so that their own financial insecurity is coming into play and how they feel that their leaders are faring. Are you surprised in terms of how this breaks down provincially? Because Trudeau's much stronger in some provinces, and Poilievre, I guess, some, as you would expect, very strong in others as we head west.
Yeah, Trudeau has the advantage in Atlantic Canada over Pierre Poilievre. But, once we step out of that, Poilievre, exceptionally strong in the prairies, good in British Columbia on this measure, and, Ontario, just a marginal advantage for Pierre Poilievre. In the province of Quebec, Justin Trudeau actually scores much better than Pierre Poilievre. I think it's about a 15-point advantage that Trudeau has in the province of Quebec, and that's a key battleground that the Liberals need to hold on to if they want to stay in government.
Oh, what do you know? That's totally surprising to me. But just looking sort of in the grand scheme of things, when we're coming off a crisis, historically, does confidence go down simply because, like we said, people are struggling themselves?
No, usually they start searching for other solutions, and it speaks to kind of I think this is a unique situation because we've come off the pandemic. There's uncertainty related to where the economy is going, and we don't know whether there'll be a downturn or even a recession this year. The other interesting little factoid is that the one province where none of the above was the most popular was actually Quebec at around 27%. So none of the above was actually more popular than Pierre Poilievre when it came to trust in economic growth.
That is so telling. That is so interesting.
Why do we say Quebecers the most cynical? It's like, a pox on all your homes. We don't trust anybody to
I love that, Nick.
promote economic growth.
Right. I love that none of the above is somehow the most appealing answer in all of this. Talk to me a little bit about age and gender. What did you see on that front? Does that affect the results?
Well, what we see is that Poilievre does well among middle-aged voters. He's basically ahead by about 7 or 8 percentage points in terms of a tip of the hat on who people trust most. But it's a tie, for all intents and purposes, factoring the margin of error between Poilievre and Trudeau among young voters and also voters that are more retired. And Jagmeet Singh, nationally he's at 11%. He does better at around 19% among younger voters. So that's the one demographic that tends to view Jagmeet Singh a little better than some of the other groups.
Okay, and then just before I let you go, Nick, I'd like your insight on this decline in support and what you think it might be attributed to, or if you're getting a picture of that from people responding to the poll. Do you think it is, I'm thinking immediately about that $6,000 suite in London for the Queen's funeral, this kind of sort of lavish lifestyle that people perceive the Prime Minister as having?
Well, let's face it, people are struggling to pay for the rent or the mortgage. They're struggling to pay for groceries. And what they're expecting is austerity from the federal government. And any story about politicians spending money that might be perceived of as being extravagant or unnecessary is just not going to wash well. So everyone needs to do their part. And for the Trudeau Liberals, they're also dealing with the fact that they've been in power since 2015, and there's some voters there are some voters that are basically just fatigued. And every government has a best before date. We don't know whether this government is hitting it now, but this is one of the key leading indicators when a government is in trouble. And I think if you're part of the red team, you're going to want to make sure that Justin Trudeau has the advantage on economic growth, because if not, it's going to make for a very difficult election.
We will see. We will see. Thank you so much, Nick. Always a pleasure.
Take it easy.
You too. That is Nick Nanos, chair of Nanos Research, on this latest Nanos poll that Justin Trudeau's support has dwindled since the pandemic, particularly having to do with economic growth.
Informative.
Interactive.
And always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Inflation went down in the month of March, so why are grocery bills still going up? Are we getting gouged? SYLVAIN Charlebois, the food professor, always has the answers. Speaking of prices spiking, something is not making sense with our groceries. So inflation was down in the month of March. It fell to 4.3%. That was the lowest level since back in August of 2021. And yet somehow the grocery prices still seem to be going up. Why is that? If inflation is going down, why are our grocery bills not going down as well? We thought we would turn to the food professor, Dr. SYLVAIN Charlebois, and find out what is going on. Thanks so much for your time again today, SYLVAIN.
My pleasure.
I also am going to have to pick your brain about Galen Weston, but more on that in a moment. So I got to tell you, last week or a week and a half ago, I'm grocery shopping, and the strawberries were $6.99, which is a ripoff, but still $6.99 is, I'm like, okay, my daughter loves the strawberries, I'll buy them. This past Sunday, $7.99. The blackberries were $5.99. Raspberries were $6.99. I mean, everything that had started to come down suddenly spiked back up again, as we're finding out that the rate of inflation has gone down. So what's going on here, SYLVAIN?
Were strawberries from Mexico?
Ah, good question. They're usually Mexico or California. I can't remember where they were from.
Probably not California. They're having a hard time over there, so They had to go elsewhere, which is the point I'm making. Over the last several months, in the produce section, grocers had to go elsewhere beyond California to procure whatever we need in produce, and those other options have been more expensive. So this is really a climate change case study, and climate change really impacts food prices all the time, and it seems to be getting worse. For example, if you're a beef lover, I think you'll be fine for barbecue season in April and May, but we are expecting beef prices to spike in July, August, because there is a drought affecting continental USA. And right now, ranchers are getting rid of their herds because they can't really feed their animals affordably. So that's why we're seeing changes all of a sudden. So that's a constant without being a constant. Other issues, packaging costs, labor. Labor is a big one. I mean, we're looking at the food at the public service today because they need more money. They want more money. They want to be paid appropriately to deal with inflation. Well, it's happening in the food industry as well.
I mean, okay, then that right away brings me to Galen Weston, because if you're paying your CEO $12 million, but you're only paying your workers minimum wage, I mean, isn't that where the money could come from?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, first of all, I know a lot of your listeners probably won't agree with me, but Galen Weston was underpaid. However,
what?
He was underpaid, absolutely. When you look at the performance of the company and when you look at his salary versus other CEOs, he was underpaid, but that's not the point, is it? He's a grocer. He's seen as a grocer. He's on television selling us food all the time. And the morality of selling food is completely different than, say, running a bank, and that's why people are upset. I think Loblaw missed an opportunity to communicate his raise appropriately. Ethically, honestly, I think they should have done something else than just saying he's getting more money, deal with it. They should have done something else for sure.
Well, and it also feels sneaky because then he's stepping back and they've hired this new Danish guy who's probably going to make even more money. So the whole thing...
Do you remember his name?
Per Bank.
Per Bank. How ironic.
I know, right?
Yeah. I can hear all the puns for the next little while for sure.
Yeah. It's not a good look. And I think like you really honed in on something there with Galen Weston. You know, he was in our homes. He was on our TV screens. We all felt like he was a friend or, you know, someone we could rely on to try and give us a deal. And so it feels like a betrayal. It's an emotional thing, right?
You know, he's moving back, like he's stepping back just because he was a distraction. I mean, he made himself a target, and I think strategically he became a distraction. So what we learned yesterday was more about marketing than anything else. I do expect Galen Weston to be back as CEO within 3 years, if not before. I do expect that. Loblaws tend to be unkind to the non-Westons of the world. To be completely honest, we saw what happened with Sarah Davis. Sarah Davis was president and CEO for 3 years. Mm-hmm. Almost overnight, she was pushed aside, and she went to retirement at the age of 53.
Way too young. Although getting paid those kind of dollars, you can probably afford to retire at 53.
No, she is incredibly competent. It's just the departure was a bit savage, to be honest. Mm-hmm. It could have been done differently.
That's a shame, hey. But I mean, that's the corporate world, and that is how things are largely done. And I feel like there's just a lack of sympathy, and kind of understandably so, from the consumer, because we're just trying to look. By the way, I'm getting texts because I was $7.99 for strawberries at my local little Esposito. I'm finding out from texters that they were $2.96 at Metro this week. Another one saying that they were $2.99 somewhere else. So there you go. Clearly, I need to change my shopping habits. But is that kind of what it boils down to?
The challenge, of course, these days that everyone actually is using high-priced examples. They don't necessarily talk about what's affordable. For example, there are major deals out there, and in Montreal, I can tell you, a lot of specialty stores, small stores selling produce only, will offer you some incredible deals. So my strategy for the next little while would be to alternate between 3 stores over 3 weeks, between a big box store, a discount grocer, and a specialty stores. And if you do that, you become better educated. You're more aware of what to buy and what not to buy at certain places. I
couldn't agree with you more. And that's actually part of the reason I don't shop. So Loblaws here is Provigo or Maxi, but Provigo is outrageous for produce. But my little guy Esposito's usually has great deals, and yet there too it has really gone up. So yeah. Let's just, while we kind of go over things here, beef, enjoy it while we can. What are some of the other things right now that we can still get a decent deal on, and where should we be expecting to feel it the most?
Well, you heard about Olymel, right?
No.
The plant closure and everything.
Oh, the meat. Yeah, I did. The processing.
Yeah? Well, guess what? Pork is really cheap right now. If you like pork, bacon is actually cheaper now than a year ago.
I saw it was on sale $2.99 at my. So why were the strawberries $7.99 and the bacon was $2.99?
Let's talk about great deals. I mean, consumers have a lot more power than they think. I mean, if you actually look around, there's some good deals. What else? I mean, the fish and seafood place, the counter there is often expensive, but there's some really good deals right now. If you look at the data that was released by StatScan yesterday, the fish and seafood counter is actually becoming cheaper now. So I would look for that.
Good to know. Get your beef while you can and get a deal on seafood and shop, like you said, rotate 3 stores, see where the deals are at. You always have such great advice. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Sylvain. Thank you.
My pleasure. Take care.
You too. That is Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director at Agri-Food Analytics Lab, also Professor of Faculties of Management and Agriculture at Dalhousie University. We know him simply as the Food Professor.
Informative.
Interactive. And always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Self-driving cars are taking a little longer than expected to become a trusted and regular part of how we get around. But now researchers are teaching them to deal with something all motorists have to anyway: road rage. CTV tech analyst CARMI LEVY on that, and how a rocket that explodes minutes after liftoff is considered a major success. CARMI LEVY is here. He's our CTV tech analyst. I realize this is not, by definition, necessarily tech, CARMI, but I was watching it this morning. So up goes that SpaceX rocket, and 4 minutes later, down it goes. And the next thing is a tweet from Elon Musk going, "Way to go, everybody, for just get the damn thing off the ground." So what's the deal here?
Well, this is SpaceX, their next generation rocket. The system is known as Starship. The top half of it, the sort of the second stage, is actually what NASA is going to be using to land astronauts on the moon as part of Artemis 3. So this is technology that is very near, it's way advanced, but it's also very near and dear to NASA's heart. And SpaceX has been developing this technology for a number of years, but it's still in development. It's not operational. And the way SpaceX works is fly it, break it, collect the data, learn from the experience, and then apply it to the next test. And if you watched a couple of years ago, they were launching the upper stage, and they did the same thing. They kept launching, blowing up, and eventually they stuck the landing. That's the same thing here. All they really wanted was get it off the launch pad. It's the biggest rocket ever made. 33 rocket engines, Raptor engines on the first stage. It is bigger, badder, more powerful, almost twice as powerful as the Artemis rocket that launched in November. So I mean, this was really the extremes of engineering. And anything after getting it off the launch pad was considered a bonus. They just collect as much data as they could, and they've already got a whole assembly line of new prototypes that they'll continue to fly. So they got further than they expected, not quite where they wanted to be, but when the thing finally exploded way up in the sky, they were losing engines, they were flipping, they were doing all sorts of crazy things. Hundreds of employees at Hawthorne, where their headquarters are, were cheering wildly. It was like a party.
Wow.
And that's the difference between SpaceX and NASA. NASA is very careful about launching. They won't launch till everything is ready. SpaceX is, let's get it to the point where we're sort of ready, and then just light this candle and see what happens. And if it blows up, it blows up.
That's very Elon Musk. I mean, I feel like that's just how he lives his life.
Where was this thing going to go if it had worked?
It was supposed to have been what's called an orbital test flight. So the first stage would have landed, it would have separated, and it would have landed in the Gulf of Mexico. Of course, they launched from Boca Chica, Texas, over the Gulf of Mexico, and then the second stage would have continued to orbit, and it would have gone around the Earth, and then it would have re-entered and splashed down into the Pacific just off of Hawaii, a couple hundred kilometers off of the island of Kauai. So that was the plan, but they've been sort of setting expectations for weeks in the lead up to saying basically this thing could explode on the launch pad. Any better than that, we'll be happy. So didn't quite get that far, but they've probably collected terabytes worth of data that was beamed back from the vehicle as it flew, and that is worth gold to these engineers. And the next flight could also have what's called a RUD, or a rapid unscheduled disassembly, but they'll just keep doing it and keep doing it. And if you watch the videos online, it's completely insane, completely unlike anyone who grew up on NASA. This is a new age of space exploration.
Okay.
All right.
Can I tell you what I'm fascinated by this next story? How often do we talk road rage on this show?
All the time. And what I find interesting about this, so self-driving cars are being taught how to detect road rage. Researchers are teaching them how. And I guess the idea here, CARMI, is to avoid it, like so that they don't honk or, make things worse, right?
Yeah, how often when I'm driving and I'm just, minding my own business in the car, you kind of know when someone around you is road raging. They drive in a certain way. Yep. They speed. They make very quick lane changes. They're, the style is very easy to pick up. And so researchers from the University of Warwick in the UK, they're actually trying to train autonomous vehicles to recognize those signs and then behave in a way that essentially de-escalates. In other words, don't get involved. If you see a road rager, the electronic brain of the autonomous vehicle should go, oh, road rager, I'm now going to back away quietly, let them do their thing, I will not engage. And turns out we're going to need this technology because as autonomous vehicles come on stream, we're still going to be driving our own cars, humans, behind the wheel for a while. We're going to have to coexist, humans and computers at the wheel. And so the autonomous vehicle is still going to need to deal with those type A personalities for a little while, and hopefully they'll not contribute to this problem. They will de-escalate rather than escalate.
I'd like to see something like this for drunk drivers, too, like if you can detect a drunk driver and then call it in.
I would think that that some of the algorithms, some of the programming and technology that they're building in to recognize road raging drivers could also be used for other anomalies like driving under the influence. And certainly I think this is just the first step in that direction. But humans, as we know, not always the most responsible people when they get behind the wheel for a whole bunch of reasons. I'm just optimistic enough that this technology will save lives regardless of what they're doing when they get behind the wheel.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just reading something in San Francisco, which is the home or was the home of so many of these sort of companies, where all these autonomous vehicles, and we're getting apparently closer and closer, but I hate to say it's been a while, and it's not as commonplace as we might have expected or hoped that they would be now. And I wonder if this technology, if this is one of those that can actually work in the real world, because there are so many regular, normal people drivers on a road that we can't account for all of them.
I'm kind of hoping that it will, and I'm hoping it's one of those what I like to call interim technologies. In other words, you don't have to have a fully autonomous vehicle, what's called level 5, where basically it does all the driving, you never need to step in order to take advantage of that. In other words, some of those middle ground technologies like recognizing drunk drivers, recognizing road ragers, integrating navigation and piloting of the vehicle, all of that, those could be used before we are fully ready to give up the steering wheel and the gas pedal. And I think that's really what this research is part of, is trying to recognize that there is kind of a middle ground, and we can save lives and improve the way our roads are, improve safety on the roads. Right now, we don't have to wait 10, 15, 20 years for it to get here.
Last thing I want to bring up, because you can't do a Week in Tech without talking about AI. It's in the news every day for good or better or worse. So we know we had a big conference here in Montreal. What's the latest on this? Are we still being warned, be careful how you use it, or have we moved on?
Yeah, no, we're still being warned. So it's called the World Summit AI Americas. It wraps up today at the Palais des Congrès. And Yeshua Benjo is one of the keynote speakers, of course. He is one of the most renowned researchers in artificial intelligence in the world. He's won the Turing Prize, which is kind of like the equivalent of the Nobel Prize for computing. And he's basically saying in Montreal, what he's been saying all along is we need to introduce better legislation. Governments need to get involved. We need better protections because left unchecked, in the wrong hands, AI can be used in the wrong way, and we need to guide its development very carefully. So he's essentially repeating what he's been saying for a while. But again, I'm going to listen to him, and I think we all should. There is, in fact, a piece of pending legislation called Bill C-27. They're encouraging from the conference, the Canadian government, to get that through Parliament this year, so that Canada can then lead the world in having legislation to protect us against the abuses of AI that other countries can follow suit. That's an important step, and they're making the message at that conference this week in Montreal.
All right. CARMI, pleasure as always. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
CARMI Levy, CTV Tech Analyst. That wraps up another edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeart Radio Network. I'm Aaron Rand, along with Natasha Hall, and we will see you next week.
Have a wonderful week.
This has been the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6
on CJAD 800
or through the iHeart Radio app.